This is the Final Word story time, number 260. The show brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in Australia. And on the occasion, as we mark the occasion of the 260th time we've recorded this show, it is an auspicious number with which to welcome Bharat Sundaresan to join me, Jeff Lemon. Do you know why, Bharat? You may, off the top of your head, through the panoply of cricketers who you've had something to do with over the period of time, does 260 ring a little bell? 260 as a career high score, perhaps, of somebody who you've spent a lot of time with, possibly in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
possibly.
yeah,
you know where I'm
I know exactly where you're going with, and that certain individual recently did call me, and it was one of the more weirder conversations I've had ever, because he wanted me to get an Italian man that he had met into Bollywood, but and then there was a three-way call where the Italian man wasn't saying anything, but he was being paraded around in a room, God knows where it was, where my Caribbean friend, my Jamaican friend, was getting him to turn around and push his hair back and show himself off to me,
To you,
with
to see
my
if you had
limited
the
Bollywood
goods.
connection.
Yeah.
And I did say, yeah, with that look and with that hair, I can make something of you, young man in Bollywood. And the Jamaican cricketer in question is the great Marlon Tooth Samuels, so who made 260, I think, against Bangladesh, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool now.
Yeah, cool now indeed. So it's one of those things that it was at a period of his career where he had so many chapters, Marlon Samuels, in international cricket. Now we have the T20 World Cup on right now, and he's the only one who can claim to have been player of the match in two successful finals for his team. So, but yeah, I mean, that was his peak as a Test cricketer in terms of statistically speaking. And what an auspicious show to be a part of. No Italian men involved here, but no Italian men
Not
were
yet.
harmed in the making of this episode yet, anyway.
Not yet. You never know where the answers might go, because you've been working on yours and I've been working on mine. So we will come to that momentarily. Before we do that, I might do the Stomping Ground giveaway. So the great Stomping Ground Brewery have been providing a couple of cases of their product per week for us to give away to people who sign up to Patreon. So here's how it works. I might as well explain the premise. Patreon.com/thefinalword. That's a website where people go and put some money in the hat to help us make the show. And many of them choose to do it not with a normal denomination, not with a $5 or a $10, but with, say, a $5.36, whatever it might be. And that links to cricket, and we have to work out what the link is. We tell the story, and this is how Storytime gets made, but it's also how you, as a listener, go in the draw to win some of the good stuff from Stomping Ground. So the winners who have come out of the randomised spreadsheet range search this week are Andrew Ballantyne, who may or may not have something to do with the whiskey family. I hope so. It's a drop that I've turned to from time to time. And a user whose name is recorded as Alex, open brackets, ice.chili, close brackets. Do I know what that means, Alex, ice.chili? No, I don't. But it seems, Winter Olympics themed. We've just had that. So it seems fitting that you somehow floated to the top of the list. If you are a person who signed up with either of those names, please email Nick, or as he is known now, Tim, at info@finalwordcricket.com and ask him to sort out the price. If you're not in Australia, you'll have to direct your case of beer to somebody who is, because that's where we can send it. But also, good time to mention that Stomping Ground, they sent me some info the other day. They're doing a float, like a limited shareholder float. So this is interesting. So they're not going public. It's not an IPO. They're not going on the share market. But they're, as a private company, they're allowing people to buy into it, and not with a huge tranche of money. You could come in with, there are tiers at $500 at up to 10,000 where anybody could buy in. And then there are some bigger tiers where you have to be a sort of ASIC approved investor, basically, to be able to buy in at bigger tiers. But basically $1 is a share. So you put in your $500, you buy 500 shares in the company, and they're getting together some liquid capital to help them on their expansion phase, build a couple of new venues and build on the momentum because they're going really well at the moment. And it means you get to own part of the brewery. You get to be part of the voting board. You get to have a say on moves that they're making and products, things that they're naming products, all that sort of stuff. And there's an extensive panel of perks as well, depending what tier you sign up at. So it's kind of a crowdfunding campaign, but you then own part of the brewery, which is a pretty cool thing to be able to say, oh, yeah, Stomping Ground, yeah, I'm a part owner in that. That's all happening at the moment. I'll put a link in the show notes. I cannot give anybody advice on what they should do in their financial affairs, but if you would like to look at it and make your own decision, you are encouraged to do so. Right. Let us get on with the show. Barrett Sundaresan, you are first up. David Rosser is a new pledger. Welcome, David. So you are actually on the list. You were very close to the top, David, for the prize draw as well. When I did the randomizer, I noticed your name only a few names from the top. You nearly got there, but you do have your number on the show this week. Your number is $4.01, 401 AUD. The clue read simply, yeah, 1991 Ashes. And I have a feeling that I know what the answer to this is going to be, but I'm interested, Barrett, to see if you have arrived at the same answer as me, because when I think yeah, all I think is one-time sponsor of the show, Advanced Hair. Yeah.
Or if you have been part of the Australian media for a long time, you'd think Daniel Cherney, who has great hair,
Yes.
so he doesn't need
that.
no hair transplants
Not yet.
at the moment.
Not yet.
Anyway. Never say never. But,
watch out, Cherney. Watch out.
Exactly.
The ravages of time may come for you, Cherney.
Now that we mentioned it on the show and linked him with the guy who is linked with probably the first, I wouldn't say face, but the first, I don't know what he's called, scalp?
Head?
I don't know, maybe the first scalp of...
the first pate.
The first pate of hair transplant, the most prominent one anyway, is Greg Moore Matthews, who I saw that picture in 2007. He posed alongside Graham Gooch, who, and every time I bring up Graham Gooch on the show, I have to talk about the time I bumped into him in this, what is it called? The clothing store in Colombo, where everybody goes to buy very reasonable clothes. And Graham Gooch was then the batting coach of the England team in the 2011 World Cup. When I went and I didn't know him, he didn't know me. He was just buying underwear. And when I saw him in Sri Lanka buy the 5-in-1 pack of underwear, I really judged him. I said, you make so much money. You should, the 5-in-1 pack underwear, Jeff, you would agree, is for people like you and I, who kind of are on a tight budget and we are just trying to make the most. So I don't think the underwear company sponsors Storytime, or can we bring that up, or maybe I should leave it out?
We can mention Step One for sure. If Graham Gooch needs a 7-pack of Step One, I'm sure we can arrange to have one sent to him.
Oh, well, looks like that's the man who scored daddy hundreds, but also bought underwear in a set. So that's Graham Gooch. But we're not talking about Graham Gooch today. We're instead talking about the man he posed next to in that picture in 2007 is Greg Matthews. And his great return of sorts in 1991, where to the pledge or to the number itself, he made 401 runs in that series, including a famous 100 at the SCG, which wasn't really looked at as the second coming of Greg Matthews. But when you look at his overall numbers and overall stats, it kind of reads as a proper reflection of what Greg Matthews' Test career was, because his primary job was as the off spinner, and often he played as the sole spinner. At times he had others at the other end to give him company, like famously in the tight Test he had Ray Bright. Someone who just always seemed to contribute more with the bat than with the ball. And before we even break down Greg Matthews' 1991 and where that fits into the larger scheme of things of the fascinating career of Greg Matthews. I think the fact that he made 401 runs but averaged 60 with the ball in that series. And, he once again didn't really deliver on the promise that he was brought into the team with. And I do wonder, look, he did play, a couple of test matches with Shane Warne, or maybe one. I think he played 2 with him. One in Sri Lanka, one, the famous SCG test where Brian Lara made 277. But who knows, if somehow their paths had crossed a little earlier, and Shane Warne was a little older, and he made his Test debut earlier. I just feel like the combination of Shane Warne and Greg Matthews would have worked perfectly. A, because of their incredible personalities, which are very different, but also, they would have provided that perfect balance where you have like this, Hall of Fame leg spinner and an off spinner who's useful with the ball, but very, very useful with the bat at say 7 or 8. And imagine the combinations that Australia could have played with. Because, I just pulled up his stats earlier. And look, Greg Matthews is brought back in to the Ashes. He hadn't played a single international match. I think he played one ODI between April 1987 and November 1990. After, obviously, as our good friend Shannon Gale loves talking about his favorite cricketer, Greg Matthews, and his beautiful piece that they had written, the Summer of Moore, in 86, 87, wasn't it? And where he just, or 85, 86, where he had just won over Australia. And my favorite line from that piece, or a headline from that era, is Greg Matthews, the cure to Australia's cricket depression. What a great headline, firstly. And what a great, what a great line to be said about you. And, he was different. He was very, very out there. He had the earring on. And I think if not for, some of his off-field shenanigans and the arrival of Bob Simpson as coach, who knows where Greg Matthews' story would have gone, because he really was at a time of despair in Australian cricket in the mid-80s. The only time they were probably not considered a force in world cricket, alongside Alan Border, really, and the emergence of a young Steve Waugh, whose picture randomly sits right behind me on the mantelpiece. You can see that was given to me by Pete Lawler one random day when I went to his house for dinner. So people ask me, is that a big moment in your life, Australia winning the 1999 World Cup? And I said, well, not really, but it is now. The Steve Waugh with the 99 World Cup trophy, if anybody cares.
So if he ever visits, you'll be able to give the impression that you're a great admirer, even if that's not necessarily the case.
No, and I think I've said this to you off air. Steve Waugh and I have spent 2 evenings together very recently, and the one thing we bonded over was not cricket. It was about our love for chickens, and he has 3, I have 7. So I kind of was like, once you have more chickens than the other guy, you just have with everything. I was telling him how it's done. Steve, I think you need to and he's showing me pictures of his coop, and I said, 3 in that, you can have 15 in those. I'll tell you how to deal with chickens anyway. Steve Waugh's emergence and Alan Border's greatness, but they needed someone who the average the average fan, but also the younger generation could relate with, and that happened to be Greg Matthews. Even though he was, not conventionally the rebellious teenager kind of character, but in that mix of Australian cricketers with Alan Border as the figurehead, he just fit that mold, and he won over everyone. He nearly got movie roles. He was almost roped in to be a politician, and his life just changed in 85, 86. But then within a year and a half, and often people link it to Bob Simpson's emergence as the first ever coach of an international cricket team. He just went away, and then he's brought back in 1991. And coming to the reputation that he had, and what I said earlier, not delivering on the promise that he was brought back into the team for. And it was Alan Border who pushed for Greg Matthews. And Shannon Gill actually sent me this old newspaper cutting. I don't know. He has all the newspaper cuttings of in history, it feels like. So Alan Border is the one who went up to the Australian selectors before the Ashes that we're talking about, and he said, no, I want Greg Matthews back. He'd seen him bowl in the Sheffield Shield final, and he said, no, he is the best spinner in the country right now. I want him back. But the line that stood out for me was this, where he says, because there had been all this stuff about him, Greg Matthews, and something that had happened in Sharjah which led to him being dropped. And this was it. Of the bowlers, Greg Matthews seems to have finally, what would you say, matured. He's dropped the punk rock thing that made it difficult for him to keep his spot, and he bowled brilliantly in last summer's Shield final. I've never heard of anyone, any cricketer being described in that fashion
being dropped
because
for
of his...
punk-related reasons. Yeah,
exactly. And if you think about it, punk rock, I mean, it kind of tells you more about Alan Border's probably lack of understanding of
cultural
punk rock
references.
music. Yeah, because he wasn't a punk rocker at all. I mean, he didn't have the spike hair. And punk, as you know, Jeff, as a music historian, towards the end of the 80s, at that point, it was gone. I mean, who was talking about punk in 89, 90?
Right, but that's classic, that's Australian cricketer brain, which is an inherently middle of the road and conservative brain for the most part. Obviously there are exceptions, but like Greg Matthews' batting returns, the standard deviation is low. So he's 15 years behind, basically. AB's cultural reference here is 15 years out of date because it's kind of mid-70s when you're heyday of punk and all the rest of it. And then by, 1990 or so, Australian cricketers have heard of it and it's filtered through into the mainstream that they're connected to. So that's the best way they can but in the same way it was an insult for a long time by like American cops or whatever, you goddamn punk.
Yeah, punk. Yeah.
So...
No, you're right. I mean, it clearly. So Alan Border feels like this guy's mature and he is ready to come back to the Test team. But the thing that he talks about the most in that interview or the press conference is about how he thinks he's the best spinner in the country. So he's brought in Australia win, and it's a pretty famous Test 100 that he makes at the SCG. His final hurrah of sorts. And for it to happen on his home ground where he dominated, and so many of his New South Wales teammates had. I mean, Jeff Lawson often refers to Greg Matthews as the best New South Wales cricketer of all time. I think it was more in terms of the attitude and how much pride he took in playing for New South Wales. But yeah, I mean, he averaged nearly 70 with the bat in that series, and then went to the West Indies soon after, the 91 tour of the West Indies, which Australia lost. But that's also where he was accompanied by his former biographer, Roland Fishman, who ended up writing the book, Calypso Cricket, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Yep, not at all. And even Greg Matthews was quoted as saying, after the book came out, obviously their friendship ended. And he said, this could really impact my Test career. And it did. I mean, they dropped him. He didn't play a single Test the next summer, which would have been the one against India, if I'm not mistaken, 91, 92. Yes, that's right. Kapil Dev got his 400 wicket, Mark Taylor, clean bowl. So, but he doesn't play. And then he's brought back the next summer, by which time his bowling is definitely not the same. But he just keeps making runs, though. That's the thing. Every time he's brought back in, he makes runs. And as statistics show, he goes past 50 in the last six of his last 8 innings, and finishes off with a Test average which is just behind Mark Waugh at 41.08. And that is a pretty, and it's not a small sample size either. 33 Test matches to average 41. I mean, yeah, we're in a modern era where 41 is a very good average. Oh, yeah. Right? We've gone past the whole mid-50s and all of them. A lot of batters averaging in the 50s. So 41, which is why I go back to my original point of if only Shane Warne and Greg Matthews, the worlds had collided a bit earlier, who knows what career he could have had, and the options that Australia might have had. And also, I guess by the time 91, 92 or 1991, he comes back into the team, and then that second or final chapter of his Test career, Australia suddenly had newer stars, right? Like Merv Hughes had emerged through the late 80s and early 90s. Ian Healy, Mark Taylor, and as you got into 93, obviously Shane Warne had already established himself in a way. And then the likes of Michael Slater and Glenn McGrath came along, and he just kind of got lost in the shuffle. And the final thing I will say about Greg Matthews is I found this. It's on YouTube. You should find it. It's a I don't know whether it's a 60 minutes interview. Maybe it is. Because there was a famous 60 minutes interview of him at his peak, 85, 86. And as I've learned, as part of my cultural education of Australian society. To be interviewed on 60 Minutes was a big deal. I'm not sure if it's the same these days. But I found this other news clip, or it's a short kind of news piece on Greg Matthews, but it's hosted by Bruce McAvaney. So I couldn't make out what exact channel it was. But in it, like, so you have this is after he played his last test, or what happened to be his last test, but he hasn't given up on coming back into the team. So it's this very melancholic music in the background to start with, as they follow Greg Matthews as he's lost his place in the New South Wales team, so he's playing some great cricket. And in the interview, he speaks about how, like, Australian cricket has kind of moved on, and he talks about the rise of Shane Warne. And then in classic Greg Matthews fashion, because there has to be something out there, right? When he's asked about his off-field issues and if that played a role in him not being picked, he suddenly just goes, "I don't know anyone who's perfect on this earth. And if you're out," and then he just, like, his expression changes and he goes, "And if you're out there, man, hey, throw the first struck, I'll put my hand up." And it just comes from nowhere, and you can almost see the interviewer go, "What?" Like, anyway, and he just kind of moves on with it.
Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Absolutely.
He's doing that bit. He's doing that bit. He's saying, well, if somebody's perfect, then they can throw rocks at me.
No, exactly. Yeah. So very biblical from him. But my favorite part is how that
famously
video finishes.
A man of scripture, a deep reading.
Greg Matthews.
Exactly. Wait till you see him do the Book of Revelations live at one of his Sporto nights.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, he's also been quoted in the past, or in the 80s, when he was at a speak about how what is the meaning of life? It's about survival. It's about procreation. Well, he's had some interesting takes over the years. But my favorite part of that video, the one with Bruce McAvaney hosting it, is it starts with melancholy, like the soundtrack, and then ends with Kenny G, like probably the most famous musician ever in India, because like I've said, Kenny G's music might die anywhere else, but it will continue to live in the elevators all around India, as you discovered during your many trips to India, and I've always mentioned it. So the fact that my answer started with punk rock, which was not true, and it ended with Kenny G, kind of in that, between Kenny G and punk rock, I think you can just fit in the career of Greg Matthews. But yes, I mean, the question was about 401. That was about the summer of 1991.
I love it. Thank you very much for that journey through musical history as well as Greg Matthews' history. And who is to say that Greg Matthews is not a kind of music of his own, a symphony of his own production and composition and arrangement? I think we'll sneak the break in now so we can have a bit more of a gallop after that. Why not? Before we do that, I will remind you once again about NordVPN. If you need a VPN, they're the ones to get. That it's as simple as that, because it's a few bucks a month. It's like $4 Australian, couple of quid, couple of euros, wherever it is that you happen to be around the world. You use the link for our sign up. You get your VPN on your phone, on your computer, on 10 devices with one account. And then you can do things like follow international sporting tournaments that are difficult to follow for reasons that I will not go into great detail, but you might find that you can't watch them. And then you might find that if you've got a VPN, you can. This is on my mind because I had to do my first T20 World Cup daily show last night. I negotiated to be largely out of that roster because of the 4 to 5 a.m. recording time where I was, but I didn't want to go through a whole tournament without doing one, so stepped up to the plate with Fernando last night. And it just reminds me that we're always following sport and shows and things from all around the world, or you're trying to buy a plane ticket where it would be better for you if you were in the country that it's leaving from, rather than a different country where you're getting dudded in a different currency, things like that, where you need to change your location. And if you want to do that, you need a VPN. So nordvpn.com/TFW, you get discounts, you get free months, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go and check them out if you need one of those. We'll be back in a moment. It is the final word story time, number 260. While we're doing administrative reminders, a reminder that you need to get your superannuation sorted if you haven't done so, particularly as relates to payday super. Now, you and I, Bharat, are people who, we're freelancers, which means that not many people have paid either of us superannuation over the years, I'm pretty sure. You may not know this, Baz, but you're actually entitled to, if you have a regular freelance employer who's paying you more than, I think it's more than a couple of grand a year, they're also supposed to pay you super. So you might want to go check some of your invoices and see who might owe you some contributions to your superannuation account. We don't have payday in the traditional sense that a lot of people have it, but the changes they're bringing in at the middle of this year will mean that payday super is a thing, which means that you have to get your amounts paid into your super account on payday corresponding to that payday if you're on a regular wage. It's a big change to the super industry. If you want to find out what that means, the ramifications of that, and if you want to figure out if your super provider is the right one, cbussuper.com.au, read the PDS, read the TMD. Those are the documents to determine if CBUS is the right fit to you. Past performance, not a reliable indicator of future performance. Let us go to number 2. This one comes in from Andrew Turner. It's an edited number. It is $4.10. I've had no correspondence with Andrew. There was no clue attached that I could find, but I just thought 410, there's one thing that 410 suggests that it should be to me, Barrett. And I know that Adam and I have discussed Sam Northeast and his 410, his innings of 410 before on the show. And we've discussed the game that it happened in. But even just reading back over it, I thought this is a game that is so bizarre that it's worth another reflection. And I'd like to reflect on it with you to have a different perspective.
Yep.
So quadruple hundreds, we know about the history of them, not many of them in first-class cricket. Celebrity racist Archie McLaren, the first, in 1895. Then it's 27 more years with a World War thrown in there until Bill Ponsford makes another one. 5 years later, Ponsford goes again. He's the only player with 2 aside from Lara.
Yeah.
And then 2 years after that, Bradman does it. So we've had 3 of them in the 1920s. And then 20 years until one of your favourites, BB Nimbolka, does it on 443 not out. Remember, I think you and I did the story about how the opposing captain refused to continue playing.
Got on the train and just left.
Because he didn't want Nimbolka to break Bradman's record, so they just buggered off. So poor old BB King had to wait, and then 10 more years until Hanif Mohammed went past it in 1959 when he was run out for 499. We've told that story as well. 15 more years until Aftab Balak, whose story is told in the Storytime book, Bedtime Tales for Cricket Tragics, which is still available. I think it's going to a reprint soon. And also, Little Float, there's an audio book coming, so stand by for that. That's in the 1960s, I'm going to say. Oh, no, 70s. Yeah. 70, 74.
Early 70s? Yeah.
1974, 73-4 season, I reckon. I should know because we literally wrote a book about it. And then 15 more years until... No, is it 64? Oh, God, I've completely second-guessed myself here. Anyway, Graham Hick gets one in the 80s.
405, wasn't it? Yeah.
405. That's 1988. So, yes, Aftab Balak must be 73-4. Then 6 years to Lara with his 501. 10 more years until Lara goes to 400 in a test. And that's it until you get to Sam Northeast. So basically you've got one in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 90s, one in the 2000s, and then 18 years until Sam Northeast makes the 410. No one's done it since. So currently we're in a 22-year block in which Sam Northeast is the only quadruple centurion, which means he's only 5 years away from matching the Archie McLaren record for the longest period of time, being the highest recent scorer in the world. So think about quadruple hundreds. You think somebody must have come in, batted first, and gone huge, right? That's the logical way for that to happen. To have enough time to do it in the game, or I suppose like the Lara one where there's been rain and there's no result likely to happen. This is not a game in which either of those things happen. The fact that Sam Northeast at this point has played at Hampshire and Kent at his third club, quite deep in his career, a guy who still averages just over 40, just a whisker over 40, and would average 38 without this one innings if you take out 410 not out, unsurprisingly. The first 2 days of the game, Barrett, are all about Leicestershire, the opposition, not about Glamorgan, who Sam's playing for. And a score is built there around another big score guy, a guy who could have joined the 400 list. Vian Mulder is the highest scorer in the first innings of this match, right? He doesn't make 300 and whatever, 370.
67?
367, that's right. He didn't go past Lara Joe Ordner into the holy Trinity, quadruple. I don't know. I always think Hayden 380. I'm never sure that belongs in that list, but you still got to get him. Now, he makes 156 in this game, Vian Mulder, batting for Leicestershire. The opener, sort of final word coded as well, Louis Kimber makes 68. At number 3, Lewis Hill has made 81. So there's a bunch of runs being put on up top. Vian Mulder comes in at number 4, bats through the day, still there at stumps, 387 for 5. Significant day one score. Harry swindles overnight with him on 52. Gets out without scoring the next morning. Vian Mulder doesn't add many, out for 156. But then the runs keep coming. The man with 2 first names, Ben Mike at number 8, Roman Walker at number 9, which is a great name, by the way. I'm a Roman Walker. Name. Yeah, just going all the way from the Italian peninsula up to Hadrian's Wall, just to check out the empire, make sure everything's in check. How'd he do it? On foot. What did he wear? Sandals. What is he? The Roman Walker. It should be a name for a brand of sandal. He should have a footwear range. Roman Walker should have a sandal range named after him. Yeah. So they put on 100.
I mean, this will make no sense to you, but I'll acknowledge that.
Okay.
Okay. I'll acknowledge that. All the wrestling fans will get it. Yeah.
119 between those two, who make 91 and 64 respectively. And then even the number 11, Chris Wright, who has a couple of moments in this game, makes 26 not out, giving it a whack. So last session on day 2, they're walking back in, Glamorgan, having conceded 584. And then David Lloyd, not that David Lloyd, is out early. Eddie Byram is out as well. They make 2 and 1 respectively. So Glamorgan have conceded nearly 600 and they're 2 for 9. And that's the position where Sam Northeast comes in and makes the third highest score in English county cricket. And goes and joins the very, very rare 400 club a lot later. So it's end of day 1. And this track, we watch back some of the vision available. The track looks pretty brown, pretty dead, and doing bugger all. But, they're 2 for 9. They're not in a good spot. And you've got to, in order to make the best of a track like that, you've got to sort of kill the bowling side first. You've got to make them bowl for long enough that they become ineffective, which... and the next day they're not quite in that position coming back on day 2. So Colin Ingram is the other batter with Sam Northeast. They resume the next day. And they've taken it to 2 for 111 by stumps, but still in a position for things to go badly from there when they come in the next morning. Ingram is the more aggressive probably early the next day, makes 100 as well while Sam Northeast is doing it. 2 key things happen on this day, Barrett. 1, Sam Northeast gets dropped at slip. On 96 or 97, I reckon, plays a little late cut at Callum Parkinson. Parkinson edges the ball straight into the hands of slip, fast, but into the hands and then through the hands, so much so that it spins away to the boundary. He raises his 100 off that dropped catch through slip. And safe to say it'd be a different game. We don't know what the result would have been, but it would have been a different game had they held on to that one. Then Ingram gets out for 139, and very, very quickly they get Kieran Carlson out for 9 and Will Root, out for a golden duck. Yeah. So 3 wickets in quick succession. They've got the chance again. And then the next bloke in, Chris Cook, makes 191 not out. So this is a scorecard, that's where you've got a burst of 2 for 9 and a burst of 3 for 19 And in between those two bursts of wickets, a partnership of 306 and a partnership of 461. This is one of the weirdest scorecards
It is, yeah.
you could look at in your life. Now, that's it. Those 5 wickets are the only 5 wickets that fall. So Sam Northeast, 308 not out by the end of day 3, with Cook on 91. And then they bat all the way until lunch, open up, go nuts. Northeast is smashing it around, adds another 100. Final over before lunch, he goes 6 and then 6 to reach 404 and then 410, which means passing the quad 100 and passing Graham Hicks 405. So they end up on 795 for 5. Despite having conceded 584, they're still over 200 in front. And with 2 sessions to go and the pitch is still flat, it should be fine. You should still be able to bat out a draw on that surface. Leicestershire are 1 for 79 at one point. Just doing it easy. And then, the spinner gets a couple, 128 for 3, still not in any particular trouble. Michael Hogan enters the fray, took a wicket earlier. Michael Hogan, you'll remember, never been LBW in his professional career. Holds the record by an absolute mile for the most innings batted without ever having been pinned on the pads in first-class cricket. He got Kimber out earlier. He gets Colin Ackerman, the bane of South Africa, in the middle order.
Oh,
yep.
You'll never forget. That was one of our special mornings. What a morning it was. You and me together.
You'll never forget Colin Ackerman at Adelaide Oval for the Dutch beating South Africa in the T20 World Cup. He gets Joey Everson out, who sounds like he should be playing second-tier football, not playing county cricket. And we'll come back later to knock off Vian Mulder near the end when Mulder's hoping to take them to safety. So Michael Hogan has his influence, the Australian quick, and another Australian quick has an influence, a little burst from a fella you might have heard of named Michael Anisa, who takes 2 in and over, both LBW, both cutting in, very Nisa dismissals. Barrett, he's, with the ball, angling, decking in, nailing them on the pads. The second one, he slips as he bowls, rolls over, sees it hit the pads, and he's lying on his back like Gregor Samsa at the end of the metamorphosis while appealing. He's at the umpire waving his arms frantically going, from flat on the pitch. He can't be bothered standing up. He doesn't have time to stand up. He's Michael Neser. He's got to appeal right now. Yes, and it is given out. So the Samsa appeal does work. So he gets a couple in that lower order, opens it up. Another wicket falls. There's about 10 overs to go when the last bloke comes out, Chris Wright, who I mentioned earlier, who's the number 11, who belted a few in the first innings, had a long journeyman career across 5 county clubs, made senior appearances for 4 of them. And he took those 2 wickets when Leicestershire was suddenly in it for a minute when they got rid of Ingram. He was the one who came in and took a couple quickly, but wasn't able to continue from there. So now he's coming out with, I think, about an hour left to bat to try to save the game, maybe 10 overs to face. Gets through a few balls, gets through a couple of those overs, and then it's Nisa again, the angle in, stumps ahoy. They win. Glamorgan win this game, having conceded nearly 600, while having time for a bloke to make 400 and another one to make 191 and another one to make another ton. It's an absurd result. It's an absurd turnover of the position. And when you look at that list of quadruple hundreds, well, we had an episode many years ago called All Triple Centuries Suck, which had the thesis that there are very, very few good Test triple hundreds in terms of actually being interesting in an entertaining game when they were required to make a score that big. This was a time when someone needed to make a score this big to save the game and give them a chance to win the game. And lo and behold, they only went and bloody did it. Sam Northeast with 410 is my answer for Andrew Turner.
Brilliant. I think it's funny that you brought up an improbable win in county cricket. And this is the beauty of story time and nerd pledges, right? We don't make it up when we say we genuinely don't know what the other person's going to say, because my next answer is going to have a game which is didn't have a quadruple century, didn't even have a triple century, but was played at the same rhythm in terms of how it went, and there was a big result in the end. So there you go. I'm excited to talk about that. But Sam Northeast too. Some believe should still play for England. I don't know. Is he still around? Is he still making runs?
He's still about. I think his time probably passed a while ago, but there was a time when it might have happened. There was a time when men were kind, but then it all went wrong. Now, Richard Jansz-Moore is our next pledger. £6.27 is the pledge. The clue said this: a hero of the modern game, without who so much of what we love wouldn't happen. But then he said, if you decide you don't want to talk about this subject, then you can just talk about Anil Kumble's season at Northants instead, because that will likely be my next nerd pledge. Well, I'm getting the impression from what you just said before, Bharat, that you've gone one way on this and not the other.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if someone wants to have a ping at this, who's listening in, a hero of the modern game without who so much of what we love wouldn't happen. 627. If someone wants to stitch that answer together, you can. But I've got a feeling you're going to talk about Anil Kumble.
I am. And the reason for that is I don't think I've spoken enough about Anil Kumble, Jeff Lemon, on this show. And and the more I dug back into the past and tried to get more information and do a little more research about Anil Kumble at Northamptonshire, I just realized that we overall just don't speak enough about Anil Kumble. And not just in world cricket, but even in Indian cricket.
Sure.
For the longest time, when Sachin Tendulkar was Sachin Tendulkar, and just again universally, Rahul Dravid is the one acknowledged as the most underrated cricketer. People didn't speak enough about him.
Come on, people didn't talk about Rahul Dravid. Come on,
think about that.
Most
right?
of my life hearing people speak about Rahul Dravid.
and so they should, and they should continue to do that. But now we are in an era where we're celebrating Jasprit Bumrah and talking about how finally India have a bowler after Kapil Dev that others want to replicate, and the kids growing up have a bowler to. And Harsha Bhogle loves talking about that. But when I think back to my childhood, I think there were so many instances in 50-over cricket and in Test cricket where Anil Kumble was like Jasprit Bumrah in the sense like with the bat. I mean, if Sachin Tendulkar had a good day, India had a chance. Similarly, often, even though Javagal Srinath had his moments, Venkatesh Prasad has his moments, Anil Kumble was that guy. I mean, he won matches for India so often single-handedly with the ball, and as you would when you take 600.
Or was the one standing up when they didn't win? Like he was so often. My memory of him is being the one who's fighting when things aren't going well, and with the bat too. I mean, look, you don't take 600 wickets by accident.
Yeah,
but. And there obviously there's that one visit to Australia that really stands out in the memory as well, where he is the player trying to drag them across the line in so many games. But there were plenty of other tests like that, and we've talked about the story of him batting with a broken jaw and all that kind of thing. His incredibly fierce determination when some Indian sides were overawed, getting washed away, he would be the one clinging on, saying, okay, "We're not going down without a fight."
Yeah, exactly, and I think. But to continue on that theme of him being underrated, what are the odds that his dream run for Northamptonshire in 1995 was probably the last year we did not get any footage of county cricket in India? And from 1996 onwards, and continues to the day, you can still watch a lot of county cricket when you're watching TV in India. And the first or English domestic game that was broadcast live in India, I'll never forget, because you can imagine a 10-year-old Bharat Sundaresan very excited at this point. He had a pretty, on that note, you might think it was a very sad childhood. It wasn't. I mean, it was in other terms, as you know, but I was I had an enjoyable childhood in that sense. But it included watching Sean Pollock take 4 wickets in 4 balls for Warwickshire. That was the first game. It was a one-day game. I think a Benson and Hedges Trophy game, so 50-over game, not the NatWest Trophy 60-over contest. But and just imagine, right? If only it had come a year earlier, we would have seen Anil Kumble do some remarkable things for Northamptonshire, because that's what he did. And he took 105 wickets. It was the first time in a long time that a spinner had taken over 100 wickets in the county championship. I think he was the first leg spinner since 1971 to have taken more than 100 wickets in an entire season of county cricket. And for him to have done that at a time when he had replaced Curtly Ambrose in the team, it kind of even further puts into context just how great a season it was. And the links with Alan Lamb as well. So Alan Lamb was his first Test wicket when he makes his Test debut as a 19-year-old in 1990. And yes, he had a run through England in that 93 series, the famous one, where I was first watched Test cricket live in Mumbai. But in 1995, I mean, he only played those couple of Test matches in his first ever series in 1990. So he was still an unknown quantity in English cricket. I'm assuming, yeah, I mean, a lot of them would have watched what he did in 93, but would have dismissed it off as like our turning pitches, Raju Chauhan, Kumble.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can imagine what it would
Indian
have been
spinners taking wickets in India are never valued by audiences outside India, right? That's just what's expected to happen.
And he wasn't, and this by 95, Shane Warne is Shane Warne. So, when you say leg spinner, everybody just thinks of Shane Warne in 95.
Yeah.
Anil Kumble, very different kind of leg spinner, had a lot of tricks, but he was, like Arvind De Silva famously said, Sri Lanka played him as the slow in-swing bowler. So, batters had started finding ways against him. And literally on a whim. So the story of how he comes to Northamptonshire is, so Northamptonshire, who still haven't won a county championship, as all our listeners know, but only three counties, right? Somerset, Gloucestershire, and Northamptonshire have never done it. And he almost not single-handedly, but in that season, he brought them as close as they'd come in a long time. They finished third, and I'll talk about how close they came later. But so Alan Lamb, they think, okay, we don't have Curtly Ambrose this summer. So we need, let's try a different tack and try to bring in a spinner. So the first thing he tried was to bring Shane Warne in, but Shane Warne wasn't available. So then he continued on that track. And subsequently, you'd hear a lot of Northamptonshire players say, when we had Ambrose, when we had Marshall, when we had these big fast bowlers, the thing that opposition batters were doing is just seeing them off. And it wasn't easy seeing off Ambrose, but you could still do that because Ambrose was going to.
He could only bowl so many overs. Yeah.
With Kumble, it was the relentlessness, the fact that he could bowl throughout the day. So those things is what they had in mind. So it was a perfect marriage. So Anil Kumble, being Anil Kumble, because he knew that India was going to England the next year, and that was at a time when Indian players were playing county cricket. You had Mohammad Azharuddin played a lot, many years for Derbyshire. Manoj Prabhakar was playing as well. As it would turn out, Javagal Srinath played for Gloucestershire that year, replacing Courtney Walsh. And Courtney Walsh had recommended Javagal Srinath to Gloucestershire. So you had Srinath and Kumble replacing Ambrose and Walsh, as it turned out. So it's quite something. If you think about it, mid-90s Indian cricket, and where Ambrose and Walsh were at that point. And so Alan Lamb.
But if you picked it now, in retrospect, if you were like, who in terms of Indian bowling from that era would have the clout to do that, it is those two.
Those two, yeah, without doubt, yeah. And by the mid-90s, they were slowly establishing themselves as the force. Kapil Dev had retired the previous year. And so Anil Kumble wanted to go play county cricket. So he has a word with his then Indian captain, Mohammad Azharuddin. And then at the same time, Alan Lamb reaches out to Mohammad Azharuddin and says, hey, do you have a spinner in mind? Because we wanted Shane Warne, we didn't get him. And it just worked out perfectly. And Azharuddin says, okay, just make sure you have a good short leg fielder, you have a good silly point fielder, and this kid is going to give you a lot of wickets. And it was purely on a whim that Alan Lamb goes. And he spoke to Sunil Gavaskar as well, as he later claimed or later revealed. And they just bring him in. And they bring him in. And as Anil says, the first thing Alan Lamb walked up to him and said was, get ready to bowl 1,000 overs this year. And Kumble was like, bring it on. Because he was that kind of bowler, as you said. He could just bowl throughout the day.
Get ready for a tired fucking arm.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and shoulder and knees and everything else. And I interviewed Alan Lamb when I was doing that Scamperwan thing during 2019 with my old friend Gav Joshi. And he told me this story. I asked him about Anil Kumble at Northampton. So I met Alan Lamb in Northampton. That was one of my first stops. And he speaks about how he knew very little about Anil, apart from having played cricket against him. So he says he was a very polite man, but the higher-ups in the Northamptonshire County Cricket Board were not so chuffed. I mean, they were used to big fast bowlers coming and being the overseas players. Unknown spinner doesn't turn the ball. Who have you brought in, Lambie? And the first game he played was a Sunday league game, and apparently went for a lot of runs. And the chairman of the board calls Alan Lamb and says, like, "What? This is the biggest blunder ever in our history. This guy is not good enough." And then, so apparently Alan Lamb then walked up to Anil Kumble and said, like, "Okay, are you feeling okay?" And he just said, "It's early season. I'm just feeling really cold." So Alan Lamb took Anil Kumble to a Marks and Spencer's shop and brought him what he described as a warm pajama, like a PJ pants. And for the next 2 months, every time Anil Kumble bowled, he had those PJs on underneath his white trousers, just so that he could keep, which is quite sweet and also quite. It is, isn't it? And from literally the next match onwards, Kumble just takes off. I mean, it's a remarkable season. 105 wickets at 20.4. And like I said, Northamptonshire were desperate to get as close to winning the title as possible. They just go on a winning ramp. I think they win 8 of their first 9 games, and Anil has an impact in most of them. It's a slowish start, gets 4 wickets, 3 wickets, and then once he starts getting into the 5-wicket hauls, he finishes with 8. He is pretty unstoppable. He just starts, 6 furs and 7 furs, and a few little things did stand out for me, Jeff, as I went through each scoreboard, a bit of a fetish for me, scoreboard browsing. So he, in one game against Hampshire, and I never thought of these two characters playing together in the same match or ever thought of them in the same sentence. So he gets rid of Mark Nicholas, who was Hampshire captain after he made 100, and Heath Streak. I don't know, Mark Nicholas and Heath Streak are an odd combination, but they were playing together for Hampshire. So in the next game, he takes 7 for 82, which were his best figures in that season. And alongside that, he's also doing really well in the one-dayers, in the NatWest Cup. Northamptonshire get to the final, where they're finally defeated by the one-day giants of that era, Warwickshire. Along the way, he in the quarterfinal, they beat Gloucestershire, where Anil's great mate Javagal Srinath takes 4 wickets. Doesn't get rid of Anil though, and but still, Anil's 3 wickets, Anil Kumble's 3 wickets gets them home. But then that brings us to the game that I mentioned earlier, which is kind of similar to the Sam Northeast one. It's called the Miracle of the East Midlands, which is a great name. I want to watch a movie which is called The Miracle of the East Midlands. And there will be a character called Roman Walker in it, you'd think. But there was no Roman Walker playing in this particular contest. And it is quite a remarkable game of first-class cricket. So we're playing this is a home game for Northampton. So they're playing at their county ground. And Nottinghamshire bat first. Tim Robinson, who's captaining Nottinghamshire, former Test opener, he makes 209. And then you have Graham Francis Archer making 158. So those two put on nearly 300 runs. And Nottinghamshire bat for pretty much all of day 1 and day 2, and they make 527 in their first inning. So at a point where, and this is getting into the business end of the county championship as well. We have 4 games to go. Crucial game. Northamptonshire desperately need to win this against their East Midlands rivals. And so they make 527, Nottinghamshire, and Anil Kumble bowls 50 overs, takes 4 for 118. And it feels like this game's just going to taper away and Northamptonshire might not get the win that they need. Enter their pretty successful batting group in that for that season anyway. They bat for the next 2 days and make 781. and they score pretty quickly as well. They make it in 162 overs. You have Alan Fordham make 130. Alan Lamb himself makes 115. Kevin Curran gets runs. Their wicketkeeper Warren makes 154. Down to David Capel, who makes 114. And by this time, you literally have 3/4 of the final day left, where they have amassed this big lead. But the pitch is obviously, understandably, late season flat. It's doing nothing. There's no turn for him. And Alan Lamb just walks up to Anil Kumble and says, well, this is your moment to shine. You've already done wonders this season. This is a win we need. The reason it's called the Miracle of the East Midlands is much like that Sam Northeast game you mentioned. It's a dead game going nowhere. Yes, they've got a lot of the first innings lead and all of that, Northamptonshire, but they need the big points for the win. And Anil Kumble bowls unchanged for 39 overs, 39.1 overs he bowls unchanged.
On figures top of the 50 in the first innings.
Yes, after bowling 50 in the first innings. And finishes with figures of 5 for 43. So 5 for 43 in nearly 40 overs. As Nottinghamshire are trying to bat. I mean, this is a team who made 527 in the first innings, don't forget.
Yeah.
And he gets all the big wickets. He gets Tim Robinson out. And at one point during this innings, he goes for a catch, bumps heads with Tony Penberthy, and he's got a big kind of, what do you call it, like a swelling in his head. But he continues bowling, like, famously he would in the Antigua game that you mentioned, where his jaw was stitched up. And he runs through them. There's some resistance from Chris Keynes, who's playing this game, as he did many years for Nottinghamshire, and gets him out, caught where else but at short leg. So 17, remember what Azharuddin had said? 17, you need a good short leg and a good silly point. 17 catches went to short leg. So 105 of the 105 victims, 17 got a short leg, Chris Keynes being one of them. Kumble takes the last wicket. And they win very late in the day. Nottinghamshire are bowled out for 157. So Northamptonshire win by an innings and 97 runs after Nottinghamshire had made 527 to kick things off. And at that point, they looked poised to go all the way and win the county championship for the first time. Then a couple of things don't go their way. The rain comes into play quite a bit. There's a drawn encounter against Warwickshire, and the last one against Sussex is more or less just washed off. So they finished 14 games, 12 wins, and 2 draws, one of which is that one. So they don't lose a single game that season, and it's probably the closest that they had come since the 1970s when Bishan Singh Bedi was playing for them to winning a county championship. So they don't. Anil Kumble, and probably for young kids growing up in the 90s in India, that was the most prominent county season that we had heard of. And this is just us reading about it. And, he was infamously or famously, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it, nicknamed Apple Crumble because they couldn't say his name. And it's something that Anil doesn't take too kindly to, because I think a couple of websites have Apple has one of Anil Kumble's nicknames, and he got asked about it recently. He gets and one thing about Anil Kumble is don't mess with him. He doesn't take too kindly to it. So the final thing I will say about this Anil Kumble run in Northamptonshire, never played for them again, played county cricket for Surrey later on, and I think for Leicester at some other point, but never played for Northamptonshire again. And Alan Lamb always says literally with one bowler, one overseas signing, we got as close to winning a championship in his reign as possible. But you love this though. This is how this is just a snippet from how the Wisden described Anil Kumble in Northamptonshire. So once it says, Anil Kumble was very satisfied with his season. So were the county, who failed to win the elusive championship, though no fault of their overseas signing. And this is my favorite bit. Unmarried, teetotal, and vegetarian, a graduate in mechanical engineering, and speaking excellent English, Kumble would join in with his teammates at the bar, even if only taking soft drinks. So these are things, except the fact that they don't say I'm unmarried, teetotal, or vegetarian. I have heard people say the one reason Bharat is such good company in the bar is because he can speak excellent English.
Excellent. It's true. You do. Because it's your native fucking language. Jesus Christ. Man. So many backhanders in one setup. Right. And the subtext is like, even though he didn't drink, he wasn't a completely boring prick because he would still come to the bar. So,
and spoke in excellent English, though.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, remarkable. Well, that is the kind of thing you come across in the literature of cricket history. But you are also part of the literature of cricket history, Bharat, and you are doing things in your own way. There you go, a Northants Connect for Richard. And we've got one more number from Rahul Venkat, but I'm going to come to that after the break in just a moment. It's the final word. It's story time. 260. Rahul Venkat, repeat pledger, has sent through $3.95. It's not about an Indian player, which a lot of Rahul Venkat's previous ones have been. The clue, Bharat, is this. This is one of my favourite batters to watch when I was growing up, and also played his part in an iconic series. He had such outstanding numbers, but it was unfortunate that his career was cut short. Had he been born 10 years later, he would have had a long test career for Australia. 395 is the cap number of one Phil Jaques. Or at least that's how we decided to pronounce it in Australia, when I suppose it would have been a Jacques at some point, unless you're South African, and then it would be Jaques, and who knows.
Yeah, true.
But Phil Jaques squarely in your sort of era of interest as well. Long career, 200 first-class matches, only 11 of them tests, which does seem insufficient given 3 test hundreds and an average of 47. But there are reasons that things panned out that way. Left-hander, he's kind of he's not a classic left-hander in the elegance and blah blah cliche David Gower sort of sense, or the rapier flashing Brian Lara sort of sense. I would say, Bharat, Phil Jaques is like if you got the video game to design a default biffing left-hander. Like he would just stand there, cut the ball, like chunky, muscular sort of player, wasn't that short, but gave that impression of basically being a square, having a low sort of base, and then just flogging the ball through the offside, or a lot of bottom hand through the leg side, through long on or mid wicket. That was, does that strike you as right in the description of Jaques?
I mean, or like, for slightly older listeners, he was almost the Kepler Wessels of the era, right? Like, Kepler Wessels used to have that big crouch, though, which Phil Jaques did. He stood pretty erect at the crease.
Yeah, high back lift.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, not... yeah, I mean, in that whole... He's not Dean Elgar, like, not in the dull Dow way. He scored pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, somewhere between Kepler Wessels, Graham Smith, not very elegant, but got the job done and scored bucket loads of runs.
Yeah, a thumper of the ball rather than a stroker of the ball. But curious career where injury is the thing that takes him out, but it's also the thing that gets him opportunities in the first place when he's making bulk runs for New South Wales. Starts at the end of 2005, as early as that in the Boxing Day test there, subbing in for Justin Langer, mate, and gets one more test in Bangladesh in 2006, where he has a 53-run stand with the first drop, Jason Gillespie.
Of course he does.
That innings, the 201, not out. The one-day team is Phil Jaques' next little adventure. So he debuted before his second test earlier in 2007. Again, injury cover, replaces Simon Kadich as opener for one game under the lid at Colonial Stadium, at the roofed stadium against South Africa. At this stage, this is an interesting bit to remember. 2006, no Australian player had ever made a one-day century on debut. There have been quite a lot of test hundreds on debut, but no one-day hundreds. And Nicole Bolton goes on to be the first to do it in the women's team, and then Phil Hughes does it in the men's team, and I think is still the only one from memory who's done that for Australia, unless something's happened recently that slipped my mind. So at this point, Jaques is on track to do it, comes out, goes after the South African bowling, reaches the 90s. He's been flogging Dale Steyn and Sean Pollock around, not too bothered by either of them, only to be undone on 94 by a bouncer from Johan van der Vaart. Remember him? Dark-haired, sort of not spindly, but a sort of wiry, cordy sort of fast bowler, and he gets a ball to lift that sort of clips the outside edge and the shoulder and goes through to the keeper. So he's out for 94. It's the highest score ever made by Australian on.
Sorry to interrupt. The way I've always remembered Johan van der Vaart, he played in that famous 430 game in the one day, but he always reminded me of Ray Romano's elder brother in Everybody Loves Raymond. He had that face.
That's not a link I've heard before, but then maybe one I'll never hear again. So Phil Jaques has this debut. He plays 5 more ODIs, and it doesn't click for him. Scattered games, 1 in South Africa, 2 in the DLF Cup, the DILF Cup in Malaysia with the West Indies and India, that I think you and I have talked about that tournament before. One for the dads, and then it's all over. He plays a couple in the Caribbean, I think, and that's it. That's his 6 ODI career, and that's all done before he gets back in the Test team at the end of 2007. They play Sri Lanka and India that summer, 100 even in Brisbane, 150 even and 68 in Hobart, 66 and 51 in Melbourne, 42 in Sydney, 60 in Adelaide. Huge summer. He goes to the West Indies, makes 76 in the Test at North Sound, 106 in Bridgetown. Flying, right? Has a back injury at that point, but recovers before their next tour to India. And then, even though he's fit, the thing is that in the West Indies, he wasn't batting with Matthew Hayden, who was absent, injured. And then he was opening with Kadich, although Mike Hussey opens in 1 innings with a reshuffle. So Jaques has made his 76 and his 106, but Kadich made 113 and 157 in the same 2 Test matches. And so with some time having passed, Matthew Hayden coming back, they're going to India. Hayden commands a spot, obviously, due to 2001, although retrospectively there's a bit of myth busting with that, where the rest of his tours to India weren't particularly impressive. But Hayden's going to get picked on seniority, so only one of the other 2 can open. And this time, Simon Kadich has been shafted so many times, but this time he's the one who doesn't get shafted, and they go with Kadich instead on gut. And so Jaques is out of the reckoning. He goes in the squad, but then has to come home with an injury, this back problem again. And while his back is gone, it becomes worse. It ends up being this recurring problem. Constant troubles with that, and then whatever's happening with the opening spot, with players making runs at different times, of Shane Watson coming in around that time and doing okay. And then Philip Hughes coming through as well. It means that he never gets back for another crack at national selection. 2008-09, doesn't play much domestic cricket, loses his national contract in 2009, has a couple of okay seasons for New South Wales to follow that, but sort of not enough to drive him back in. He's making a couple of hundreds in the season rather than absolutely dominating. And then 2011-12 doesn't play much either, only a couple of games, pulls a pin on his New South Wales career. Almost his last game is the 2011 final, where Philip Hughes makes 138 and 93 on the losing side, remarkably, and Ed Cowan makes a big 100 for Tasmania to get them a Shield title that year. And then Cowan's the Test opener by the end of that year. So there are all of these sliding doors bits with Phil Jaques. He plays 3 more seasons in England to good effect with Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire, and calls time on his first-class career then. It's 2014, I think, when he wraps up. So a career that promised a lot more at Test level, delivered a lot at first-class level, and one of those rare players, particularly for a specialist bat, whose final Test innings that wasn't due to a retirement was involved him scoring a century. Something that he'll take, whether that's consolation or not, I don't know by this stage. It would be interesting to know how Phil Jaques views his own career by now, with some time to digest it and let it settle. And I don't know, maybe that's a conversation that one day we'll be able to have.
I've been fortunate to do quite a bit of radio work and Shield work with Phil Jaques in the last 4 or 5 years, and you know how in my world there are only 2 types of people, and he's a sweet guy. Like he is a sweet guy, lovely reader of the game. He's done coaching since retiring from his playing days, and a very analytical mind when it comes to talking about cricket, but a very nice sense of humor as well. It's a very soft-spoken guy, and now has become a fixture for the ABC. I saw him at all Test matches during the Ashes in the last couple of summers, and I'm sure we'll work together again. And when you look at Phil Jaques and his career, all I can think of is what the Australian selectors, the current ones, would give for a Phil Jaques, right? Like it would have been. You think back to that era. Mid 2000s. So yes, Hayden and Langer held the roost for so long, for 5 years, almost 5.5 years, as the opening combination in Test cricket. But then you always had Chris Rogers and Simon Katich, and Phil Jaques was coming through. A little later, Phil Hughes, and so many others that didn't even play Test cricket. They were so spoiled, and they could just. Ed Cowan came around a little later.
Yep.
There's so many options for them over there at that period, and you compare that to now, where two back-to-back seasons we've had, summers we've had, where the big debate going into the Test summer has been who's going to open the batting for Australia, and it's very likely that we might have it again.
Yeah, or where are they going to find an opener rather than, it used to be who's going to open the batting out of 6 possible candidates with strong claims to it and who's going to be unfairly done by. Now it's more like how are they going to fashion an opener out of somebody or other, and I'm sure we will do that again, as you say. But that is it for us for today's Storytime 260. If you want to be part of the show, please go to patreon.com/thefinalword. Sign up, send us a number. You'll go on the list. New pledges, first-time pledges, you will get on the show within 3 months. That is our pledge to you. And but if you're an existing pledger and you up your pledge, you also go in the running to win the Stomping Ground beer giveaway. And you'll also go in the running to win the Step 1 Jocks giveaway that's running over the next few weeks as well. Men's, women's, whatever you want. And if you don't want the prize, you can elect to have it sent to somebody else. We will do that for you.
Graham Gooch.
Graham Gooch. Jump on, Goochie. This is good. These are good odds. You can get on with a couple of quid as a pledge, and you'll stand a good chance of getting. And it's a 7-pack, Graham. So you get an extra. You get an extra pair. No need to. You can have laundry day. Can be once a week on the same day. People who like regularity enjoy that sort of thing. Please jump on. The most Gooch-related Gooch content that we've had on the show for a while, talking about the Y fronts. That's it. This has been Storytime. Thank you, Bharat Sundaresan, and thank you to everyone for listening. We will see you again very soon.